Namaste and greetings, Unity of Fredericksburg. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you once again to do this thing we call spiritual practice. Even though today's topic, transition, is a topic that many of us really don't like to discuss. I'm in transition and I don't like it. However, pause for a second and ask, when you hear that word, when you read that word transition, what comes to your mind? Oftentimes in New Thought, what comes to mind is transition is the replacement word for death. For example, my mother made her transition Father's Day, June 2020. We don't say she died in New Thought generally. We say the person made their transition. But did you know that the etymology of the word transition actually means to go across or to go over something in the same way that a bridge does? It goes across, it connects point A to point B. It goes over something, like a bridge over troubled waters, to be in transition. So the question, since the word transition can be used in a variety of different ways, the question is for us, when we are experiencing transition in our lives, in whatever way that it's happening, what are we going across? What are we going over? What is this bridge connecting from one experience to another experience? Breathe and take that in. And for a moment, what I want you to do is bring to your mind's eye, as we excavate this a little bit more deeply, think about the following sentences that include this word. Natalie feels this was key to her successful transition and her amazing turnaround. From across, over, connecting. What was the thing that connected for Natalie? Okay, what about this one? Like most films of its day, Little Caesar reflects the awkward transition from the era of silent film to the new age of talkies. Across, over, connecting. What's the transition from one experience, silent films, to a new experience, films with sound? Okay. The graphics are very impressive, as in they are smooth and seamless transitions from one slide to the next slide, from one image to the next image. Cross over, the transition from one image, moving from to the new image, moving across in consciousness, moving across in ideas. Mallorca and the rest of Spain were going through the political transition from a dictatorship to a democracy. The transition from to. So once again, as we excavate, one thing for us to really be mindful of and recognize is that this word, it indicates two key things that we really don't like overall as humans. We don't like movement and we don't like change. Now, for us in New Thought, we understand that everything begins in consciousness, first and foremost. And things manifest based upon our mental equivalents. Now, what is our mental equivalent? Thoughts we hold in mind, emotions and feelings that power those, the manner in which we communicate to ourselves and to the world, and then how we show up in action, our mental equivalent. So transition means we are moving from something to something else, moving from one task. Remember I said we don't like movement? Moving from one task to another, moving from one conversation to another, moving from one breath to another, from one habit to another, from one state of awareness, one state of consciousness to another. Changing our habits, changing our consciousness. Now, if we don't like change and movement, How does it work when we recognize that we are always in transition in some way, shape, or form? Spirit is never stagnant. The universe is not stagnant. So just like we are breathing, are we breathing right now the same breath that we breathed an hour ago? Are we experiencing the same minute or the same hour that we did a day or two ago? No, look at any clock and we can see the second hand transitioning from seconds to minutes to hours to days to weeks to months to years. We are always transitioning. Is today's sunrise the same sunrise on the day that we were born? No, it's a new. The world is always moving, orbiting. The sun, the flares, they are different. Same sun, is it? Am I the same Raymont that I was when I was 5? No. Moment by moment, I shift, change, and become more of what I am. All of creation is eternally in motion. Eternally in motion. We are always in transition. Always. The universe is not static. Spirit is not static. It is ever expanding consciousness. That means it is always in transition. Now, let's think about this for a moment. You had breakfast today or some snack, coffee, something. You nibbled, sipped on something today. The clothing you put on to come to church today. When did that come into effect? Now, you can say you transition from sleepwear into church wear, and then you transition from the house into the vehicle, and then from the vehicle at the house to the road to church. It's in transition. But what if we go back before that? Let's go back to when car became car. Well, we can't really even start there because it was an idea before it was created. And even before it was created, before the tools and instruments and materials were brought together, they were somewhere else. There was iron and steel and all of these things, rubber and different things in different places. And so they all had to start somewhere to transition into something else, to transition into something else, to be available for someone to take the idea, to then create and manifest it, to then mass produce it, to then make it available to you, to then allow you to travel in it, to then move from home to church and back again. You get what I'm saying? Transition began at the beginning of creation. Now, funny thing is, that which God is has always been. So creation, transition has always been as well. Spirit is forever. While it is unchanging, God is what God is. That which it is in expression is always moving, flowing, ebbing, changing, shifting, moving, changing, moving. Did I say moving and changing? You get where I'm going. And what it is, we are. It is this incarnated self. So if the universe is always moving, then so am I. So check this out. You've got cells, you've got blood vessels moving through your body. They're in movement. They are changing. Your heart beats. It is in movement. It is changing. Your lungs expand and contract. It is in movement and you are changing. You have one thought to another, movement and change. Movement and change is the nature of how we are as spirit. So what we tend to do is we judge and compartmentalize. That's why we try to avoid transition. That's why we try to avoid change. We compartmentalize it and we say, but transition is painful. My mom transitioned. It's grief and it's mourning and it's sad. I don't like it. And so we make transitioning from a job. Well, if this transition was painful and sad, that's going to be pain. Transitioning from a relationship, well, that's painful and sad, that's painful and sad, that's painful and sad. We connect the dots and make transition mean painful and sad and something to avoid at all costs in as many ways as possible, rather than saying, wait a minute, am I investing my energy amiss? Am I seeing this from a less than powerfully effective stance and position? What happens when I lean into transition? What happens when I address what it is that I am afraid of? Because there's nothing wrong with feeling sadness and grief and mourning. And therefore, by default, there is nothing wrong with this state of being in transition. No matter what the transition is, there is nothing wrong with it. So when we're anchored and grounded and in alignment with spiritual truths, spiritual principles, and spiritual law, then we live, move, and have our beingness in a far more effective manner. And it gives us the ability to navigate more effectively the various transitionary experiences in our lives. When I know who I am, then I'm able to navigate, to move across. I'm able to navigate, to move over. I'm able to navigate, to connect points A and B with ease and grace and greater effectiveness that is life affirming. But I have to practice it. Now, we're all familiar with the idea of the butterfly. The caterpillar transitions into the butterfly. And we use it as this spiritual metaphor to say, but the butterfly, for dost thou not knoweth in good... Yeah, we use it a lot. We use that whole allegorical, metaphorical, metaphysical butterfly thing a lot. And yet, how many of us are willing to do what the caterpillar does to transition into the butterfly? How many of us invite and engage the process within our own lives? Why do we not do it? Fear. We fear the mystery. We fear the unknown, and we fear this thing called change. We fear it rather than pause, breathe, excavate. What am I truly afraid of? And then embrace the fear. Don't bypass it. Don't sidestep it. Marinate on it. Observe it. Embrace it. Pour love onto it. And then exchange the fear by engaging the mystery, engage the change, engage the discomfort. You know, we find the process of transformation, metamorphosis, and transition, it can be a great process of joy and satisfaction and appreciation when we engage the process. Rather than avoiding it, rather than bypassing it, do what Siddhartha Gautama did. He transitioned from Indian prince to a yogi, and from a yogi to the Buddha. Had he stayed a prince in the palace, safe behind walls, would he have awakened to become Buddha? Would he have journeyed across consciousness, over fear, mystery, confusion, by going deep within it and awakening to the truth? Was it an easy process? No. If you look at any of the stories about his life, it wasn't an easy process. But for him, it was a necessary process, one that yielded him the experience to awaken as he desired to awaken. And this is because he was willing to engage the process fully. We are invited to do the same. And when we do so authentically, in other words, feel the feelings, process them, engage in the spiritual practices that give us the ability to move through the emotions, to move through the feelings, to move through the fears and frustrations, ultimately moving deeper into and embodying faith and freedom. When we do this authentically and powerfully, change takes place. And it matches the degree of courage that we are willing and how we have the fortitude to move forward, the audacity to move forward, to act rather than withdraw because of fear of the mystery and the unknown and change. We step forward and we walk the walk. And we do this because the essence of our being is the Christ. The true essence of our being is the Christ. And when we do this authentically, walking the walk, then that truth of our being is what is now living, moving, and having its beingness in, through, and as each of us. It's not fear having its way. It's just like Yeshua in the desert. Satan, the lies about life, the lies about mystery, the lies about fear showed up and harped on him. Well, you do know, and if you do this, and Yeshua got to the point where he said, I know who and what I am, and therefore that which is the lie, Satan, get thee behind me. You will not govern where I am going as I move forward. So when we authentically put the lies, the fears behind us, and they are not driving us, they are not what motivates us, because fear motivates us to avoid. Fear motivates us to disconnect from community and conversations and relationships. Fear inspires us to shut down. Fear motivates us to develop resentment and hold grudges. Fear. So when we put that behind us and allow the true essence of our being, love, the Christ, joy, power, presence, the audacity to be in, to recognize change and motion, then how we move and navigate through life becomes far more graceful and easeful and loving and compassionate. So let us keep in mind, in the Science of Mind textbook, there's a particular passage that says, thoughts going into the subjective, thoughts going into the law are like seeds. They act through the creative medium of mind and must have within themselves the full power to develop and to express. But how could they express unless they are already known to mind? And that's capital M mind. In other words, unless they are already known to God. Mind, God, must view the thought as already completed in the thing. And mind, God, must also contain the avenue, the transition, the path through which the idea is to be expressed. Every thought sets the fulfillment of its desire in motion in mind, and mind sees the thing as already done. Simply being in transition, we are already done. When we step in, as soon as we have the idea, it's already fully formed and fully functioning in the mind of God. So leaning into it, yielding, gives us the ability to stand with power and navigate how we move across, how we move over, how we move through this thing called life. So with courage, face it. With tenacity, maintain it. And fortitude, and love, and ease and grace. And then we recognize that within the transition, there is a greater and greater and greater gift, always yielding and unfolding and revealing itself to us. and through us and as us. And it's simply because we are surrendering and allowing it to be rather than resisting and clawing our way through it. So today, as we prepare to enter into meditation, we enter in recognizing that this breath can only be breathed right now. As I always say, we cannot rebreathe yesterday's breath. We cannot pre-breathe tomorrow's breath. We cannot save a breath for a rainy day. Only this breath, this inhale, and this exhale in this now moment. And what I am recognizing is that inhale, the transition as my lungs expand to bring oxygen in, and the transition as that oxygen moves through my lungs to then oxygenate my blood, for my blood to move through my body to nourish my body. It is always in transition. And as that breath comes in and this process goes, there is also then that exhale. And it is that exhale that then sends carbon dioxide out into the world for the greenery to inhale that. And this exhale releases what this body no longer needs to hold on to, the transition. And in the same way that my body is a demonstration of this process, I anchor and ground and recognize that my body is simply a physical demonstration of how the universe operates. So when I see transition occurring within my body temple, I also see transition occurring in the body of the universe, the body of God. And so I breathe and recognize this process. I accept it. I recognize it. I allow it to be. And so we breathe, anchoring and grounding. Breathe. Avun de bashmaya net kadish, shamuchtete malkutach, nechoete biyanach ikanach, di bashmaya af ba'archa. Havlan lachma da sunkenan yamana, washbuklan haubein, wachtehein ikanadaf chanan, shwachanel hayabein, wela tachlan lenasuna, ele patzan min bisha, mitul de lache malkuta, wachela watishbukta, ela alam, almin, amen. Breathe. Om Shanti. Breathe. Simply allowing transition to become a comfortable word, transition to become a spiritual practice to engage in daily, to recognize the process of transitioning, awakening in the morning, the transition from night to day, from sleep to wakefulness, transitioning the process of preparing a meal, transitioning the process of ingesting and enjoying the meal, transitioning, allowing that meal to nourish the body temple, and then transitioning to let the waste be removed, transitioning from one song, one note to the next note, to the inhale that then releases the next note, transitioning. Om Sachitananda Parabrahma Purushottama Paramatma Sri Bhagavate Sameta Sri Bhagavate Namaha. Transitioning. One foot in front of the other, transitioning. one sentence following another, one page turning to read another, transitioning, a stage play, act 1, scene 1, transitioning into act 2, scene 4, transitioning. We are ever, always in transition. For transition is the state of ease and grace of how the universe moves and acts upon itself, how God acts upon itself. Om Shanti. So right now, this meditation, we are transitioning, anchoring and aligning consciousness, anchoring and aligning with the truth of our being, spiritual truth, spiritual law, spiritual principles, anchoring and grounding, aligning with the realization, I am that I am, ever becoming more and more and more of what God is as me. Transitioning. So we breathe, and we breathe, recognizing the isness and allness of life itself, for there is only one life, and that life is God, and that life is joy-filled, beautiful, passionate, and powerful, and that life is my life now, and what is true for me must be true for every other incarnation of spirit. There is only one mind, and that mind is God, and that mind is infinite intelligence itself, infinite wisdom itself. And therefore, what I must have access to in my mind is wisdom, intelligence, knowingness, skill, the capability to think and steward well. For this is the truth of God. And what is true for me, once again, must be true for everyone right now, meditating, hearing these words, anchoring and grounding to them, infinite intelligence and wisdom, love, joy, power, peace, the audacity to recognize the Christ of our own beingness shining forth, recognizing that there is no little light of mine. This great, grand, and glorious light of mine is the light of truth of my being. And what it is, I am, and what I am, it is. There is no still small voice of God. The voice of God, the voice celestial, is a loud and clear and booming truth. It is only quiet when the sounds of life and fear and worry and doubt somehow drown it out. But in this moment right now, in this meditation right now, we are anchored and grounded and in alignment with the truth of our being. And we recognize this voice celestial, the true voice of the divine, our spiritual magnificence, the truth of our being, loud and clear, knowing what is ours to do, living, moving, and having our beingness in joy and in gratitude, in power, in an unapologetically magnificent way. We are love made flesh. And now we go. And every person we meet, everyone we see, and everyone who sees us sees the face of God. Everyone that we hear and everyone that hears us hears the loving voice of God. And everyone that we namaste to, handshake, fist bump, give a hug, whether in person or by distance, it does not matter. It is all energetically oneness with that which God is. And when this happens, the very vibration of creation is transmuted, transformed, transitioning from body to body, from God to God, the vibration of creation. Recognizing this, we allow this prayer, this meditation, this service to be what it is, beautiful, delicious, and good. And we anchor and ground and we say, yes. Yes to God. Yes to God as us. Yes to transition. Yes. And so it is. Amen. Love you. Blessings. See you soon.